Year after year, Madden NFL is one of the highest selling video game titles in North America, and it's also one of the most criticized titles in all of gaming. It's been called out for its lack of innovation, and EA's exclusive partnership with the NFL has casted huge amounts of shade on the behemoth of a franchise. Now, Madden released back in August of 2015 to generally good reviews from gaming sites. Its current Metacritic rating is an 83 on PS4 and an 84 on Xbox One, which is a number that has steadily increased over the past few years. So, two questions. Why am I reviewing it just now? And has Madden really improved that much to justify the higher Metacritic scores? As for why I'm just now getting around to reviewing Madden 16, I was in a way boycotting the game. Maybe boycotting isn't the correct term, but really I just wasn't interested in what they had to offer. I am and have always been a franchise mode guy. Since the days of middle school, I would spend most of my free time living in my own football worlds. And let me tell you, those old franchise modes are definitely worlds worth living in. But all Madden 16 seemed to offer was a bit of a facelift to a franchise mode that we've seen for many years now. I decided to pass when the game launched, and I really didn't have much desire to play the game, that is until recently. Since Madden 16 came out, a huge debate has gone on in the video game football community as to whether the all-new wide receiver DB interactions are overpowered, whether they're too scripted or not. So I went down and grabbed a copy to see for myself. I wanted to give Madden 16 a fair shake, and that's exactly what I did. Here's what I saw. Let me not bury the lead here. I enjoy Madden 16's gameplay, for the most part. However, and there are a lot of howevers, it's nowhere near what I would call a great playing game. There are a lot of animations that either need to be cleaned up or scrapped completely. Most of the time, players look robotic in running and reacting to plays naturally. And there are a lot of moments where either the player, the ball, or both shift into place. Most of the QB throwing animations look dreadful, as the ball will just jettison out of the player's hand. One-on-one tackling animations are still an eyesore. There's one animation in particular that has been in Madden for a very, very long time that I can't stand. On the flip side, there are some newer animations in the game that look nice and are possibly a look into the future of what the game could look like. The physics system can provide some intense moments, but most of the time it just makes players look dumb. Oftentimes, players will go limp and smush into each other like a drunkard trying to squeeze through the turnstiles at Disneyland. Players will rise from the ground like they're on strings, and they'll often trip over each other and miraculously land on both feet. You see, physics are a complicated thing in video games, as they often lend themselves to these pratfalls, but they also deliver dynamic surprises that an all-animation system, after a while, just can't offer. Or at least that's the way it's been to this point. It would be nice to see EA be able to nail one or the other, but instead Madden 16 opts to meddle in the middle, warts and all. The CPU's clock management rivals that of Andy Reid's. It's pretty awful. It's always been pretty awful, but it seems worse in Madden 16. Jameis Winston had 12 seconds to spike the ball and stop the clock for his team to attempt a short field goal, but instead, he just walked around and let the clock run off. Every game you play shows a few displays of suspect AI, especially when it comes to line play. Being able to switch the camera with the D-pad is awesome, though the camera defaults to a really zoomed in view that I don't care for at all. That can all be changed in the menu, but why the developers would zoom you in so close to begin with baffles me, especially when that style of camera has been much maligned by consumers in the past. Maybe some folks like it, but I didn't care for it at all. Along with the new wide receiver defensive back interactions, which we'll get to in a minute here, EA Tiburon has also added in some new passing mechanics. Now by holding a button modifier, you can choose to throw high to low, or fast or soft. For example, I found it very useful to hold L2 while throwing a curl route, putting the ball down by my receiver's feet where only he could reach it. This occasionally resulted in a drop pass, but it's better than a pick six, which would happen way too frequently in older games. One thing I didn't care too much for is the manner in which you throw a touch pass. If your receiver's running a route, and you have a linebacker in the direct path of your throw, you can throw a touch pass to float the ball over the linebacker's head by double tapping the receiver icon. This method didn't work half the time and was somewhat difficult to remember in the heat of play. Now overall, giving more control to the player over which pass they throw is definitely a good thing though. And speaking of things that are definitely good, let's break down the wide receiver defensive back interactions. As a receiver, you now have the ability to choose what kind of catch you want to perform. There are 3 to choose from: the rack catch, which allows your player to continue running after the catch; the possession catch, which gives your player a better chance of holding onto the ball, but a worse chance at getting yardage after the catch, as the receiver will likely fall to the ground; and finally, the aggressive catch, which is an all-out effort for the ball, and the main focal point for arguments in the community. Is aggressive catching overpowered? It would sure look like it if you just watch somebody throw up the ball to their main receiver play after play. However, I personally don't think aggressive catch is overpowered, and here's why. Now understand that I'm not an X's and O's kind of guy. I've never played a down of organized football in my life, and I'm not a coach's son. But I understand the basic concepts of man coverage, zone coverage, cover 1, cover 2, cover 3, etc. Say you always call a cover 1 man defense. You'll almost always get smoked by the aggressive catch unless you have a cornerback who can match up physically with the receiver. In cover 1 man, you don't have the safety help you need to cover a go route on the sideline. Now, double team that receiver or call a cover 2 and up, see how successful they are with the aggressive catch. With 2 or more men covering one receiver, it's going to be tough for that receiver to get the leverage he needs to make the catch. Playing the receiver instead of the ball gives you an even better chance at stopping the aggressive catch. And this is what I really love about Madden 16. For the first time in, well, ever, I feel like I'm rewarded for knowing football fundamentals and recognizing what the opposing team may be trying to do. I wouldn't consider myself to be anywhere near an elite Madden player, and I typically don't play online, yet with Madden 16 I was making people quit left and right because I was adapting my defense to their style and completely shutting them down. People trying to spam the aggressive catch got picked off, one after the other, and I'm not sure I've ever felt such a rewarding feeling playing someone head to head as I did then. The wide receiver DB interactions add a dynamic feel to gameplay, a feeling of who's going to win this matchup and what's going to happen next. Some of the animations for wide receiver DB interactions could use some love though. After all, they are animations, and there needs to be enough animations to cover for the eventual predictable nature of the system. And just because I say aggressive catch isn't overpowered, doesn't mean there aren't other things about gameplay that aren't overpowered. The quick toss was a play I found a lot of online users spamming, and it's a tough play to stop, mainly because you need to make a bunch of adjustments and user control a defender all before the offense snaps the ball. Even then, because of the jerky nature of the running animations, it can be tough to bring down the ball carrier. I'm not saying there shouldn't be plays that are hard to stop, but there should definitely be a better way to prepare for them. If I know my opponent is running a quick toss, there should be a quicker audible to get ready for that play. Drag routes are another tough route to cover, considering how much Madden relies on speed. Trying to get any defender to defend a 95 speed rated receiver in a drag route is nearly impossible. My point is that we should be relying less on user control to stop plays we know are coming, and more on audibles to get our defense prepared. There are definitely way too many one-handed catches. Yes, one-handed catches are becoming more of a common thing in the NFL, but there are some players and circumstances where that animation shouldn't play out. This seems like something that could be tuned. Let's talk quickly about presentation. Simply put, Madden 16's on-the-field presentation is okay. It's sufficient, but it's nothing too inspiring. Thankfully, there are more stat overlays and pertinent information relayed to the player throughout any given game. Madden 16 goes for the futuristic approach, with large game stat displays and small player stat overlays that are tethered to the player they are talking about. It's a bit unrealistic and reminds you that you are playing a video game, but they did grow on me a bit as time went on. It's a pretty slick idea, and it's only a matter of time before this is commonplace in the real world. There's something of a halftime show where Larry Ridley, who sounds like he should be doing voiceovers for some midway game from yesteryear, runs back some of the highlights from the first half. It's definitely better than nothing, but boy is it basic. The announcing is whatever. It's honestly not bad, but again, nothing too inspiring. It still feels like it's read off the page for the most part. Let's talk about one of my biggest, but not my biggest, pet peeves about Madden 16. The menus. Boy, do I hate the menus in this game. They're obnoxious, they're confusing, and obnoxious, which I already said, but man, they are really obnoxious. Big tiles, moving images, a general lack of organization, they are just the worst. What happened to the days of having everything in a neat list with some razzmatazz going off on the side or whatever? And the menus get even worse when you actually get into some of the modes. I get that these big tiles are the hip thing to do in games today, and Madden is far from the only offender, but I'm over this stuff. Speaking of stuff I'm over, Madden Ultimate Team returns and takes a front seat in Madden 16. If EA pushed Ultimate Team any harder, it's liable to fall off the edge and become its own game, separate from Madden, feeding off the microtransaction offerings of thousands of MUT heads. EA makes bank with MUT, over $100 million, bested only by FIFA's Ultimate Team mode, which makes $500 million. I've never been much of a fan of Ultimate Team, but Madden 16 somewhat changed my opinion of the mode. You see, because Madden 16's franchise mode is so underwhelming, and a lot more on this in just a few, I played a significant amount of Madden Ultimate Team and the brand new Draft Champions mode. In Draft Champions, you draft cards through 15 rounds to build a team that you'll be running with for a set amount of games. Run the table with your fantasy team and you'll earn rewards for MUT. It all feeds back into MUT. MUT must feed. Draft Champions was cool for about 2 hours, and then I completely lost desire to play it. The coolest thing about Draft Champions, and really the only thing that sets it apart, is the drafting portion. After a while, you'll start to see the same cards over and over, and then interest wanes. And with the only rewards being that of MUT coins and cards, you might as well just be playing MUT as it is. Besides, from what I've seen, the rewards for Draft Champions are pretty lame in comparison to doing MUT solo challenges, which demand significantly less time and pay out significantly better rewards. But if you couldn't figure that out, I wouldn't blame you. MUT's learning curve seems to be quite steep, and the jumbled menus do not help at all. The menus are also fairly slow to load, which makes managing your cards and your team a big chore. However, building up your team from scratch is incredibly rewarding and addictive. Trying to figure out which cards to buy at the auction, which packs to buy, when to save your coins, when to throw a card up on the auction block, signing cards to contracts, it's all very understandable to me how someone could get so addicted to the mode that they feel the need to spend money to improve their team. Even still, I never felt pressured to spend money, and that's a great thing. The MUT solo challenges I mentioned earlier offer a quick way to play Madden if you only have a few minutes to spare, and new challenges are constantly thrown up to complete. Although, most of the challenges are odd, asking you to complete historic situations with modern day teams, or sometimes the teams will be mostly modern day with the exception of 1 or 2 legends on the roster. MUT is weird, MUT is scary, but MUT can be fun. In the end, however, I just never felt compelled to continue building my team. Everything has a shelf life, and your mileage may vary, but I just found myself doing the same thing over and over and over again, and I grew bored. Madden 16's biggest offense is franchise mode. While many areas of Madden 16 reek of legacy issues, there's no section of the game where that's more prevalent than franchise mode. Firstly, the developers encourage you to use the game's online cloud feature so that you can reap the benefits of future patches. However, if you choose that route, even if you're the only one in the league playing the game by yourself, you'll be at the mercy of EA's servers. If your connection to the server drops at any point during a game, it won't record any of the game. You'll have to quit, reconnect to the server, and start the game again. Tiburon has introduced a new feature to patch the problem with this situation, which they call Sim-A-Win, and it allows you to, you guessed it, simulate any game and choose the winner of that game. However, the simulations are oftentimes outrageous in their results. That's not to say that a user control game can't be outrageous in its results, but at least you saw what happened. It's a harder pill to swallow when the CPU makes it all magically appear. So you say, screw that, I'm picking the offline option, and now the game won't cheat you out of any wins. But, after a season or so, you start to realize that this is not only what you've been playing for the past 5 years in franchise mode, but it's even less immersive. The new menus plop a streamlined to-do list in the main page, something somewhat similar to what NFL head coach 09 did with their menus. And the menu is 98% blue. Just a giant sea of blue. Some stories may show up on the main screen, but you'll likely skip over them because they're covered in blue. Remember those news stories with the different pictures that would show up in Madden's past? They're still there, they're just buried in a menu on the last tab. If this was done to make the menus load faster, that's all well and good, but the menus don't really load that much quicker. And I find it too much of a pain to go into that backdoor menu every time, only to read about who threw 3 touchdowns last week. A new depth chart interface has been introduced, which is slick, but mainly unnecessary. It does expedite the process of switching through positions, so that is a plus. Scouting rookie players is now more simplified, and I like the system better than what we had. The menus for that are fairly pleasing, but I still think we should be able to see the players we're scouting, rather than just dumping a bunch of points into as many players as we can. I didn't feel attached to any one of the players that I scouted, and that's mainly due to the simplified process. I suppose making scouting easier has been a double-edged sword. The Combine actually produces Combine numbers. Imagine that. And this is a great addition, but I can't believe in this day and age that we have to get excited about Combine numbers returning to the game. The new player cards, which spill a bunch of useful info onto one screen for each player, may be my favorite new addition this year. The draft presentation is different, but it's still boring. There's no flair to it, and it totally fails to capture the magic of draft night. And then there's XP and drive goals. Every player earns XP for the stuff they accomplish on the field, and that XP can be used to improve their attributes and unlock traits. I really can't stand XP. It annoys me more than it intrigues me. It's constantly popping up everywhere. So-and-so has this much XP to spend, this guy just got X amount of XP for running 3 yards. Which brings me to drive goals, the super intrusive graphics and goals that pop up in the middle of your game, letting you know that if you give wide receiver number 2 3 passes in a row, he might play a little better. Screw wide receiver number 2. I'm trying not to turn the ball over and win this game. Sometimes the drive goals line up with what I'm intending to do in the first place, at which point drive goals can feel rewarding. But if I had to choose to keep them or kick them to the bench, I'd get rid of them. You can turn off drive goals and delegate XP progression to the CPU, and you can also adjust the amounts of XP that is earned with an option that was patched in. But the problem there is that the developers spent all that time focusing on XP and drive goals, and ignoring them doesn't make the game any more rich, it'll just make it less annoying. I'd be okay if XP were limited to training camps and things of that nature, but seeing it constantly pop up in the regular season is just overwhelming, especially if you're someone like me who likes to control more than one team. There are drills that you can run during each week in game prep to earn XP and confidence for your players, and I think that's a good idea, I just don't care for it being in season. By the end of my virtual year, I was just opting the quick confidence for all game prep option and moving on. It became more of a hassle to me than anything. The fundamental problem with franchise mode is that it misses the point of what franchise mode should be. We should be creating our own NFL, our own football world. But Madden 16 is a closed, shallow, poor representation of the NFL and all the interesting things that take place. There's little to no customization in the mode, there's no realigning divisions, no ability to change formats like playoffs or extra points. There's relocation, but you aren't even allowed to create your own teams. You have to use the teams they create for you. It's insane that with how the gaming scene has gone since Minecraft hit over 5 years ago, that we're this creatively stifled in the number 2 selling game in North America. Franchise mode is a bore, and it needs a brand new foundation. I was still seeing problems I've been seeing for years. Stuff like rookies having the same first and last name, and most looking nothing like their roster management photo. I also experienced the menus glitching out at certain points. This mode is just an absolute mess. But let's end on a positive note. Madden 16 is a good looking game, like really good looking game. The lighting is fantastic, although I definitely wouldn't mind seeing it improve even further. Player likeness, in most part and after an update, looks pretty great. The visual fidelity is impressive and the surroundings look better than ever. Madden 16 is a very slick looking game. And Madden 16 overall is an okay game. Looking at just the gameplay, I could recommend Madden 16, but I look at games as a complete package. And on Madden 16 as a complete package, I cannot recommend it. The main mode, franchise mode, is functional most of the time, but it's nothing I care to play beyond a season or two. If you're a fan of Ultimate Team, I think you'll enjoy this iteration. The game is definitely geared towards making that mode a focal point, and Draft Champions is a nice way to play head-to-head games against a friend. But beyond that, Madden 16 doesn't have much to offer. If Madden 17 can right the wrongs I brought up in this review, I think it could be a contender for Sports Game of the Year. However, Tiburon has just shown that they can't do much year over year. And when games like NBA 2K16 can build the feature set they have and deliver amazing presentation and have solid gameplay, you wonder why a franchise like Madden that makes hundreds of millions of dollars every year in microtransactions alone can't also produce in the same way. EA, it's beyond time to step your game up. I give Madden NFL 16 2.5 out of 5.
Touchdown!